The White House on the Corner. A woman who wasn't named Tanya lived in the house 2 down from us on the corner of the block. Sometimes she had a husband, and at times she didn't. Her son lived with her most of the time. Tanya's dad owned the house, and she stayed there. That's pretty normal in our neighborhood. It's not uncommon for a family member of the owner of the house to stay there. It's hard to sell properties in the inner city for a profit, and the carrying costs, insurance, the water bill, and real estate taxes are relatively low. If a family member can cover those costs, you can wait out the market in hopes that the property increases in value. I think some people aren't interested in being landlords, but don't mind a version of landlording that requires less effort on their part. Tanya's situation seemed to fit that explanation. Tanya was an eccentric human being, which made it harder to connect the dots that she also struggled with mental illness. It wasn't until she moved out that I even made the connection. On the scale of neighbors we have had, she was pretty good. I think you get that in an owner-occupied house or even a long-term rental. Transiency is hard. Anyone that sticks around for a while and is moderately respectful is easy to get along with. In 2019, for the first time I can remember, the house sat empty. It sat that way for a while, maybe 18 months or 2 years. When you have an empty house on your block, you keep an eye on it, especially when you know the owner. I had met Tanya's dad a few times, and from the license plate on his truck, I assumed he lived in Tennessee. Tanya's ex-husband worked at a store we frequent, and we would see him every couple of months. Meg would ask about Tanya, and his response was rarely that she was doing well. Her bipolar was spiraling. She wasn't taking her meds, which made her more erratic, which made her take her meds less. Can you help me break into my house? I knew someone was staying there after being empty. It was a kid, maybe 19. Most 19-year-olds aren't great neighbors. I wasn't a great neighbor when I was 19. As I was walking from my house to We Got This, the kid stopped me to ask if I could help him break in. He was locked out. Being locked out is a universal experience. I've been locked out before. It was hot outside, and he had an air conditioner in one of the windows. I knew how we could break in if we wanted to, if I wanted to. If I wanted him to. A situation like this happens in my neighborhood. I know the owner of the property. I know the owner of the property cares about what happens to the property. I know that there's a chance we might damage something by breaking in and that the owner of the property would prefer it to not be damaged. I tell the kid, no, I don't think I can help you. That's okay, Alex. Don't worry about it. As far as I knew, I had never spoken to the kid before. Why does he know my name? In my neighborhood, a very small percentage of the people are up to no good, like in the opening credits of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I know that to be true, and I try hard to never assume that to be the case, but I do so with a level of cautious optimism. That's okay, Alex. Don't worry about it. I hadn't seen Tanya's son since he was in middle school. Cautious optimism made me ask the kid, "How's your mom doing?" The kid said, "Not so good. She hasn't been taking her meds." Looking back at the window with the air conditioner sticking out of it, I fake a light bulb moment and tell him to give me a minute and I'll go get a ladder. Breaking into his house went about as smoothly as it could, and within minutes he was standing in the bedroom ready to unlock the front door and go on with his day. When he came outside to thank me and chat for a minute, he told me how he had been given the house from his grandfather, the man with the Tennessee license plates. The kid's plan was to clean up the place and slowly fix it. 100-year-old houses in neglected neighborhoods always need work. The water lines rust out from the inside and become smaller on the inside over the years. The electrical systems have rarely been updated since the 1950s, and often there aren't simple things like light switches where they should be, or a bedroom might only have one outlet. His house had an issue with the porch. It was falling down. Windows were broken, and it needed a roof. A few months later, I saw his grandfather, who seemed to be skeptical about the kid's plan to renovate the building on his own. I think we both wanted him to be successful, but also knew how much work, time, and money it would actually take. We get these postcards in the mail all the time. cash offer for your house. The postcards are addressed to the owner listed with the city and are searchable by anyone that wants to know who owns a house. When we bought our second rental, the one owned by the famous slumlord, I had given him my information so we could drop a contract for the building. He had an office about a mile from our house, tucked back off of a main street that runs east-west through the city of Milwaukee. Inside of his office was a lobby area with a waiting room. A large sign told tenants and prospective new tenants that their lack of planning was not his emergency, and then gave the penalties for paying late rent. To the left of the pay window, which was separated from the lobby with bulletproof glass, was a door that led to his actual office. That's where we met to come up with a deal for the house. I'd like to think I'd be less intimidated by the process if I were to do it over again, but who knows. In each of the real estate deals we have done up to this point, we wanted to buy the houses, but beyond purchasing them, there's a motivation to make the neighborhood better, which raises the stakes, at least mentally. I've gone by my middle name Alex as long as I've been alive. My first name is the same as my dad's, Ronald. I forget a lot of times that my name is different from what I tell people it is. There are 5 kids in my family, and growing up we each had a baby book my mom would curate. Inside of each of them are pictures of us throughout the years, from infancy to high school graduation. The cover of the books are cross-stitched with our names embroidered in the center. I remember being in elementary school looking at my baby book and wondering why my name was wrong on the cover. It wasn't until I asked her about it that I realized my first name was different from what I thought it was. When we filled out the paperwork, I had to explain this to the slumlord, not the baby book part, but that my first name was actually Ronald. The same thing happens to me when I'm at a restaurant. The person working there asks me if they can get a name for my order. I tell them Alex, then I have to go pay and hand them a debit card with a different name on it. I get nervous someone is going to call me out for using a fake name, and I start mentally preparing my arguments to prove that people do actually call me Alex. Sitting in the slumlord's office, he asked me to spell my name. I start with an R instead of an A. This confused him. I thought your name was Alex. We only paid $14,000 for the abandoned house kitty corner from ours. In my mind, I saw the whole deal crashing down on account of my name. I quickly explained to him that my middle name is Alex, which is what I have been called all my life. It's what the A stands for on my driver's license. He buys it and starts writing an R instead of an A. One by one, I list off the letters, and then something happens. Maybe it was the nerves, or maybe it was the fact that I was in elementary school the last time I spelled Alexander, but I couldn't for the life of me remember how to spell my middle name. The hard part of this whole transaction was supposed to be walking into the slumlord's office, convincing him to sell me a specific house that had sat abandoned for a couple of years and negotiate the lowest price possible. I did all of that only to forget how to spell my middle name. The first 4 letters were relatively easy, A-L-E-X. I know that part. I read it all the time. The hard part came next. For some inexplicable reason, I told him that following the X was a Z. A-L-E-X-Z-A-N-D-E-R. There isn't a Z in my middle name, but I laugh every time I get a postcard in the mail from someone trying to buy my house, and it's addressed to Ronald Alexander with a Z, Bruzan, which is the name the house is officially titled under. When I saw the kid's grandfather the last time, I mentioned to him that if he wanted to sell the house, if for some reason it didn't work out with the kid, to call me. That didn't happen. Not the part about it not working out with the kid, the part about calling me. No one tells you when the house 2 down from you is sold, nor should they. You have to figure it out on your own. The first clue is people moving. I never saw the kid move out, but I saw the new tenants move in April or May of 2022. In the upstairs unit, a mom with a couple of kids moved in. Then another family moved in to the upstairs unit with the mom and the couple of kids. Then a group of 19 or 20-year-olds moved into the downstairs. The total number The total number of people living in that house fluctuated. I don't have some weird authority complex where I count the number of people living in a house, but working at We Got This, I know the kids' names that showed up on a Saturday. If a Varian came to work on a Saturday and then I saw him walk home to the White House on the corner and then again on a Wednesday hanging out in the backyard and he told me he lived there, it was safe to assume that he did in fact live there. By the summer, at least 3 different families lived in the upstairs unit of that house. The kids staying there accounted for almost a quarter of the kids coming to We Got This. Staying there with the kids were the adults responsible for them. Without any way to verify the accuracy of this claim, I would say that there were at least 6 kids and 4 adults staying in the 2-bedroom upper that summer. As the summer began to turn into fall, the families spread out. Brian and Averion moved. Then Antonio and Sherelle and their adults moved. By the end of September, only a girl named Muffin, her sister, and her mother remained. Muffin's mom was the one that 4 months prior told me the back door of the house didn't lock, which is why it was almost always open during the summer. Not open unlocked, but open. She's also the one that told Meg that there was no hot water in the building for the months of April and May, and what her rent was, which was near the top of market rate. She's also the one that told us she was being evicted at the end of November. We had gotten to know her and her family through We Got This. Muffin was there every week. One Friday afternoon, after finishing up a day of work at Charlie's house, I walked out of his front door and headed toward my house. Charlie's house is 5 houses to the south of us, and Muffin lived 2 to the north. Standing in front of my house was Muffin, who asked me what I was doing that night. I told her that I was going to bed early so I could be ready for We Got This in the morning. I asked her a similar question, and she gave a similar response. I've got work in the morning, too. On a Thursday in November, Muffin's mom asked to borrow our truck. She had to be out of the house by midnight. As Meg began loading things into our truck to drive them to where they were staying next, it became obvious that they hadn't moved much yet. Meg and I spent most of that night helping Muffin and her family move. That was the first time I walked through the upstairs unit of that house. During the summer, I saw about a dozen people who seemed like they lived there come and go. It wasn't until that night that I put it together that the dozen people were all living in a 2-bedroom unit that was essentially a dump. Very few people would choose to live there. When you help someone move, you have to take things from one house and move them to somewhere else. They moved about 9 blocks away. The house they moved into looked like it was being renovated. Some of the walls were missing drywall. The living room was packed 5 feet high with someone else's stuff. The kitchen had no cabinets. There was only one bedroom with a mattress on the floor and a small TV on a stand where someone else was already staying. As I unloaded Muffin's family's possessions into their new house, the remaining floor space was quickly filled with boxes and garbage bags of clothes and blankets. After 3 hours, near the end of the night, Muffin, her sister, and I stood in what was supposed to be the kitchen, not sure what to do next. The man that lived there was in the bedroom, sitting on the mattress on the floor watching TV. It was after 10, and Muffin's mom was back at the White House on the corner, packing up the rest of her worldly possessions. Muffin looked tired, and I asked her if she wanted to go to bed. She said yes, so I cleared enough floor space to lay down a mattress and emptied one of the garbage bags of blankets and made the bed. Muffin's sister told me she had a test in health class the next day and was going to stay up and study for it. I meandered through the maze of boxes and garbage bags, walked out the front door, and drove the 9 blocks back home. Less than 48 hours later, someone tried to kill the downstairs tenant by shooting into their house as they drove by.